Welcome to TWD Symbolism Analysis, hosted by me at TWD Music Box Mystery, also known as author Lisa K. Hill. This is where we totally geek out about the recurring symbols we see in the show, what they mean, how they connect, and what they foreshadow. So if you're a TWD geek, come over to the dark side. We have Daryl. Hello, Walking Dead symbol enthusiasts. Okay, today we are going to do an intro to the episode Them, which was episode 510, and to the music box. I already told you in my story about how I came to TD that Them was very instrumental in that, because after Coda, I took a couple of weeks and I came to TD and I started reading their theories, and I really wanted to believe they were true, and I did, but I was not super concrete in that belief. I was still a little wishy-washy about it. And then I watched episode 9, and, Beth was in that episode in a way that suggested she was dead because she was part of Tyrese's death hallucination. And I was sort of on the fence about that. I still overall believed that the theories were correct, but I didn't really know how to explain the fact that she was part of his death hallucination. So I was kind of on the fence about it and kind of wishy-washy, but I was kind of also just waiting to see what happened. Then episode 10 came and went, and to this day, it is one of my favorite episodes. I absolutely love the scene in the barn where they all hold the doors closed. It's just a really inspiring scene about them working together, and I remember just absolutely loving that. And I definitely didn't recognize all the symbolism that was in that episode when I was first watching it. But as soon as I saw the music box, I knew that it was a symbol of Beth, like the instant I saw it. So the first time we see it is Carl bringing it to Maggie and saying, "I found this when I was looking for water, and I thought you might like it." And I went, okay. Beth saying she's the music symbol in the group. And so Carl saw the music box and thought of her and brought it to Maggie as a way of, giving Maggie something to remember Beth by, right? And Maggie kind of clutches it to her chest and sort of holds it with her throughout most of the rest of the episode. So I knew right away that that was a symbol of Beth, and I kind of went, okay, let's see where the symbol goes. This is going to be important. I just recognized that right on the spot. And of course, the episode proceeds, and Daryl tries to fix the music box, and he tells her that he fixed it. But when she and Sasha go out to watch the sunrise, and they open the music box, it sort of jams again, and they both laugh. Now, here's the thing. If they had left it at that, with the music box being broken, or if they had maybe left the music box behind because it was broken, have Maggie set it down, I'm telling you right now, if they had done that, I would not be someone who believed in Beth's return, because that would be a very clear symbol that Beth was dead, her time on the show was done, because the music box wasn't playing, and even Maggie leaving it behind, it actually would have been a really positive storyline for Maggie, because it would have been her saying, I'm going to be okay, and then sort of moving on from Beth and being okay doing that. But it also would have shown that Beth was not coming back. But that's not what happened in that episode, is it? No, instead, miraculously, without any help, the music box springs to life. It is a resurrection symbol, and it is a symbol of Beth waking up. So that, up to that point, I was a little bit wishy-washy on TD theories, but that is what absolutely 100% cemented me as being a believer in Beth's return, and I really haven't ever strayed in that belief since then. Okay, but let's talk about some of the other symbols in the episode Them, because it's a very, very important episode in terms of Beth's return. One of the first things we picked up on is that at the very beginning of the episode, Rick and Daryl are walking down the road together, and Rick says, "It's been 3 weeks since Atlanta. I know you lost something back there." Now, we picked up on this because of Rick's arc, and I'm going to get into how Rick and Beth have parallel arcs later on and why that's important. But people went and did some research and, tried to figure out how long Rick was in his coma back in episode 1. Apparently, this is a question that was asked by the fandom in general, and the answer was about 3 weeks. So from the time Rick got shot to the time he woke up alone in the hospital was 3 weeks. That's all the time it took for the zombie virus to kind of take down humanity. So the fact that he said it had been 3 weeks since Atlanta and then the music box woke up, we're seeing that as a parallel to Rick's coma, and that Beth was probably in some sort of coma for about 3 weeks before she woke up from that. And that, of course, was symbolized by the music box waking up at the end of the episode. Okay, so at the very beginning of Them, we see them looking for water, and Sasha is in an utterly dry riverbed. She's even, digging with her toe, trying to see if there's water further down, and there's just not. Everything's really dry. And then Daryl and Maggie show up, and, they all shake their heads at each other because they haven't found water. So this is something we actually just figured out. It was probably during season 8, and WD Way was the one that actually came up with it. And it was one of those things, once she said it, it really clicked for all of us. And that is that one symbol for Beth is water. We believe Daryl is fire and Beth is water. So they're kind of opposites in some ways, but they also complement each other really, really well, which means they go well together. So the dry riverbed, we've seen this symbol multiple times throughout the season. sign. And I believe it represents simply that Beth is not there. No water, no Beth. And of course, they do find water by the end of the episode. It rains, but having them in a dry riverbed, it specifically, they use that symbol to show that Beth is not around. She's not around for this arc. She was not going to be around for several seasons, and that has been true. We see dead frogs in the dry riverbed. Frogs are actually not just in Walking Dead, but in classical literature, they're often a resurrection symbol, can live both on land and on water, and because of their metamorphosis. So you have the fact that they're dead, probably due to not having any water. So once again, those are Beth's symbols, the fact that she got shot and the group thinks she's dead, and no water. But frogs also, like I said, go through a huge metamorphosis in their development. And so you could see that as a character thing, going through a character metamorphosis, like such as Beth starting out weak and becoming strong. But the fact that these frogs are dead show that, at least for the time being, as far as the characters in the show and the audience are concerned, she's dead. We see a bridge. The group sort of tricks walkers into falling off the bridge. And I'm not going to go into bridges today because bridges are their own thing. They're a really big symbol in The Walking Dead, but we kind of see, it's certainly not the first bridge we'd ever seen, but it was the first one that caught my attention and got me thinking about what the bridges represented. All right, so then when it starts raining and they get into the barn, Rick kind of gives his famous speech about how his grandfather was part of the war and they have to do whatever is necessary to survive, and then they get to live after that. There was a lot of symbolism in that speech. There's a lot of themes in that speech, but there's also a lot of foreshadow in that speech. You know, they made a big deal, even on The Talking Dead and outside the show, about how Rick never does this. He never talks about his past. He never talks about his family. So they would have specifically put, dialogue or a story in for him to tell that would have meant something. So it's no coincidence that he talks about a war and about getting out of the war alive. And then after that, a couple of seasons after that, we actually have two different wars that they fight. The first is All-Out War against Negan and the Saviors, and the second is the Whisperer War, which we're currently in the middle of. So chances are that speech was sort of a foreshadow of one of the wars, that they needed to get through the war before things got better. And then, of course, the storm and the walkers come, and they all have to work together to survive. That's also a foreshadow of what would happen during the war. They would have to work together to survive that war, and it was going to be hard. It was going to be a huge trial, and that was visually represented in the episode by them, straining with everything they had to keep the barn doors shut so that they could survive the night. I also strongly believe that there was a foreshadow of Carl's death in this sequence. It was not something I would ever have picked up on, not until Carl actually died, because nobody thought they were going to kill Carl, right? He's still alive in the comic books. But looking back at it, there's a part where baby Judith, she's just a baby then, is crying, and he actually puts her down to go help lend his strength to, what you might symbolically see as the war effort. And the reason I think that is a sort of a death omen for Carl, or a foreshadow of his death, is because when he died, he passed his sheriff's hat to Judith, and then, Judith was handed to Daryl. So it was almost like Carl handing off his stewardship of her to somebody else because he wasn't going to be around to take care of her. And I think that's what him putting her down and going to help with the effort to keep the barn door closed in that episode represents. It was a foreshadow of Carl dying during the war Rick was just talking about. And of course, the music box wakes up after that. So they get through the night, which is symbolic of them getting through the war, and everything's a little more peaceful after that, and then the music box wakes up. So you could see that as meaning that they need to get through one or both wars. I mean, obviously she didn't show up after All-Out War, so now we're looking for her to show up at the end of the Whisperer War, and they needed to get through that before the music box woke up, which was symbolic of Beth's resurrection and her return. Okay, then the next morning, as I said, the music box wakes up, but Aaron also shows up. Aaron's a really interesting symbol, and I think he's going to be instrumental in some way in Beth's return. I've talked about before how Beth is sort of a Christ figure or a Christic figure in the show. When Aaron shows up, he says he has good news. Trust me, that is purposely placed dialogue. The Christian gospel, the word gospel actually means good news. So he basically says he's bringing them the Christian gospel, and then we have the resurrection symbol of the music box waking up. So that's all very, very purposeful. And yeah, then you just have me being a diehard TDer after that because the music box woke up. This was also foreshadowed by Beth herself back at Grady when she said, "I still sing." The music box still singing, even after it should have been dead, is very much, a symbol for what her arc is and what it will be. I'm also going to point out that this happened during a sunrise. I'm not going to talk too much about that right now, but just know that usually when a new arc begins, a new story moving forward, there's usually a sunrise involved. So you can tell where the new arcs begin based on where they show a sunrise. So this was a new arc in terms of this was Aaron arriving to take them to Alexandria, and it was going to be them finding a new home, not being nomadic anymore, getting to Alexandria, all of that. That was the new arc. Another example of a sunrise in a new arc has to do with when Negan arrived. Obviously, that was a new arc because they were going to be dealing with the Saviors now and the beginning of all-out war. And after Abraham and Glenn were killed, we see the sunrise in a very obvious way as Negan kind of asserts his willpower over Rick. So that's a new arc. So you can keep an eye out for that when you see sunrises. It usually signals the beginning of a new arc in terms of the storytelling. The deer symbol is another one that was really big from this episode. And I'm especially proud of this because I think I was the first person to actually put the deer theory together. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it here, except that Daryl seeing the dead deer is really, really important. It's a symbol that we've seen over and over again, the deer. And, you know, maybe to the general audience, it's just a representation of him mourning Beth because he sees a dead deer. He's recently lost someone. She's died, or at least he believes she has. But it's actually much more complicated than that. And actually seeing the dead deer, believe it or not, is an indication that she's alive. So I will do a whole video just on that. But this was the episode that really made me pay attention to that symbolism. Okay, I'm going to stop there for today. Let me know what you think. And if there's anything in particular you would like me to do a video on moving forward. See you soon.